Hello, everyone. Welcome to this virtual panel presented by WIA. Founded in 1995, WIA Women in Animation is the only organization dedicated to advancing women in the field of animation. We envision a world where women share equally in creation, production, and rewards of animation, and we provide resources and connections to make it happen. My name is Kylie Ellis. I am the chair of the Women in Animation Vancouver chapter, a producer and production executive. And with me is Jen McCarron, CEO of Atomic Cartoons and Thunderbird Entertainment. I respectfully acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I feel fortunate to have lived on these lands for my entire life. Now, before we get started, feel free to use the Q&A box and send us your questions throughout the talk, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Kylie. Thank you for having me here today. Big thanks to WIA and to the Spark Festival. It's great to be talking to you.
It's so good to be talking to you as well. I want to get started by you telling me a little bit about yourself and your approach to leadership.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's one of working for the artists and the talent. I was really lucky back in the late 90s to get my first job at Mainframe Entertainment as an office production assistant. And I had gone to film school as well as university, studied film studies and journalism. And when I started at Mainframe, I really felt like I'd found a community. I have absolutely zero artistic talent, but I loved being around the creative people and working for them. And what I realized is I derived a great deal of pleasure of trying to create an environment where people could do their best work, where nobody felt like a number, where each and every person felt honored in what they were doing. And if I could work my hardest, starting right as an office production assistant, to try and create that environment, then I could see that teams could flourish, people felt good, they felt honored, and then the work would be better. And so that's still what drives me to this day, is that mission. I really want to create a safe culture where people can make mistakes. Certainly, Lord knows I make a ton of them all the time. But I think through creating an environment where it's okay to make mistakes and that no one's going to point fingers at you, will have your backs, because if people are trying new things, mistakes will happen, but then innovation can happen. And I think that's super important. And as a leader, I try and really stress the values of the organization and make sure there's values alignment throughout, because then I think anything is solvable. And through that, you can empower the amazing people around you to do your best work. And finally, I think in terms of leadership, it's wonderful to see people come up through an organization from within. And I think that, having a great mix within your culture of that is that's what drives me as a leader, is working for the people that are doing the hard work every day and just trying to create the best possible environment.
I hear you. I think I follow in the same footpath there. How is it adjusted though, like through the pandemic? Have you had to adjust how you lead people through this?
Definitely. I mean, my goodness, I think all of us on the phone can relate to those days back in March where you, as leaders, you train never to be reactive. You don't want to get into a reactive situation. You're always trying to be proactive, anticipate. But in some ways, being reactive actually helped. Because we were all thrown in this together. Teams came together. The IT and pipeline teams around the city are just heroes. I mean, I think we can all give them a huge round of applause.
I hear you.
I think people, we've had to double down on our communication, lots more one-on-ones. That has certainly changed during the sort of 5-minute chat by the desks aren't happening anymore. I used to rely a lot on meetings of watching people and trying to observe their body language and how they were feeling. I've lost that tool as much as I try and pin people's video in Zoom and try and wonder how they're doing. It's a lot harder to read.
It is.
A lot less natural. And so just picking up the phone a lot more. I don't think this is a change, but something I've really tried to stress is just in British Columbia, aren't we lucky to have Dr. Bonnie reminding us every day?
Yes.
But to lead with kindness and without judgment, because I think nothing is more important than being kind right now and operating with zero judgment, because everybody is dealing with something. And the world, there's a palpable anxiety that absolutely
yeah,
everybody is feeling. I mean, it's real. And I don't know if you find this, Kylie, but when, for me personally, little things that I might have been like, oh, that's water off a duck's back. A little thing happened at work today.
I use that phrase all the time now. If there's something that's just kind of, it's not sitting well, I'm like, water off a duck's back every single day. And thank you to RuPaul for having a contestant that introduced that phrase to me. But man, I tell you, it helps so much.
It is. And it's hard because I find I'm not as good at brushing things off as I used to be. Maybe because I'm not in the rhythm of my day anymore and I'm in my basement all the time. But little things, suddenly I worry about things too much. And then it's just a very strange time. So recognizing that in myself and trying to, make sure that all of us as leaders within organizations are listening. And I'm so fortunate at Atomic to have the most incredible team of women, like, Nadine Westerbarkey is leading that, lives and breathes those values every day.
Do you find that it's been 8 months almost that we've been through this and working from home, and when you look back on it, is there anything you think, I wish I'd done that a little differently?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. I think, certainly too many things that I would love to do differently.
Give me one or two.
I think just one thing is moving more quickly on decisions. When you're not in the rhythm of things, sometimes I think I've sat on things waiting to see, and I'm not getting as much of a touch point. And I think that can hurt teams if I wait too long to make a decision. And even if it's not the right one, I think as long as it's one that's aligned in values, then you're going to go forward and you can pivot if need be. If that's what I'm trying to say. Is it true to the values of the organization? Is it who we want to be as a company? Then let's just make this decision. Let's go for it. And then if need be, we can pivot. And I think sometimes I've sat on things too long in this weird, now I'm still sitting in my basement Groundhog Day feeling.
Yeah, I'm in my basement too. I hear you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's true.
Is there anything else? Holding on to things too long and?
Oh my gosh. Things I would have done differently. Certainly, gosh, I wish I could have anticipated that this was coming, and
don't we all?
Yeah, some of the departments that have been harder to get working offsite, like editorial, whatnot, it's almost like I think maybe you always try to be so positive about everything I do, but I think a little bit of plan for the worst, hope for the best might have been right, just started thinking, what is the worst case scenario, even though we hope that never happens, and work backwards from that. I think we could have done a better job with that. And then, always going to worry about those little holes of communication that are popping up right now. And just realizing that doubling down on the communication, even if you feel like it's been said before, you're not bothering anyone, because there's so much easily missed right now.
There is. And you don't get those easy conversations, as you were saying earlier, just being able to walk up to someone's desk and just have a chat and figure something out in 5 minutes. Now you have to book a meeting. It's not as easy from the work from home.
You think, I think everybody knows, but then a key person may not even know you're doing a new show. crazy things like that can happen because we're just not in the rhythm of it, or you're not in a studio where you're seeing the work happening and unfolding, and that tangible piece of it all is missing.
Yeah. I mean, with the work from home stuff, like culture is such a big part of our industry, right? So it's, you know, it's definitely a shift when everyone isn't working together. So how have you and your team managed the studio culture? Because where you are at Atomic and Thunderbird, I mean, I think it is, it's known for its studio culture. And so how have you managed it?
Well, again, I'm so grateful to be on an amazing leadership team with deeply caring, kind individuals. And we've really just increased our one-on-ones tenfold. Just picking up the phone with people, sometimes even phone calls more so than Zoom. When if anyone out there listening has a teenager and you're trying to get them to talk, you never just sit and look at them. You try to go for a drive or a walk. Something.
That's what I would do. Let's go for a walk.
Exactly. And then people, you feel a bit more relaxed. You're not staring each other down. And so having that opportunity to really engage one-on-one in a area of no judgment, full kindness, people are going to start to let you know where they're really coming from. And that's where I think we see some of the differences happening. Certainly the facilities team is doing a great job setting up, Zumba, it's like yoga classes, contests, pumpkin carvings today, Halloween costumes. We've been trying to send little presents to people like jigsaw puzzles, things, to keep people entertained.
Have you sent care packages? Like
yes.
To your entire crew?
Yeah, just little things like here's some puzzles and shirts and just trying to things that people know we're thinking about them and how much we care. And it's just trying to do those because we're not able to do the parties anymore or get together. But it's, just really making sure no one's missed. We do a lot of company updates, a lot of town halls. We just finished one. Anyone from Atomic, I just took off my Trolls wig and here we are. And so just trying to make sure the communication is as open and being available. Nothing means more to me than the people. And the entire leadership team is the same. And so being available for anyone who needs to talk and being aware that people really, I find, are having good weeks and bad weeks right now. And it's going up and down.
I like your approach to staying connected with people. Now, when everyone started working from home, you think it's going to be shorter term, but now with it's kind of obviously extended out. Have you provided like additional support, like funding for people to buy maybe a proper desk or a chair or what have you for their work from home stations?
Definitely. There's money in place if people need, ergonomic help or more mesh for their Wi-Fi, whatever it is. We're trying to look at people's individual home setups as well as, changing our benefit structure. What is our benefits? How could they better help people? So we've gone, added in more of a package for online so you can reach therapists, doctors. You never have to leave your house. And then try to increase the focus on mental health so that there's more benefits available in that area.
That's fantastic. I think that's really thoughtful for a studio to do, for a company to do for their team.
Well, I don't think we're the only ones. I think that's another thing that's hard about this right now is the way the companies have come together to compare notes. And there's some amazing leaders throughout our industry. And really, when the pandemic started, lots of conversations with lots of different leaders, including yourself, which was wonderful. What are you doing? How are you helping? Like, are we working together? Is there anything we could be doing better? And not about who's winning what work, just about, we're all in this together. How do we do right by everybody? Yeah. And that's been really heartening.
That's one thing I love about the Vancouver animation community is that it's very open and collaborative, and the studio heads all talk to one another just to ensure that, there is a common ground and that we're supporting each other because we're, one extremely large family at the end of the day.
exactly. And people
You know?
go between studios and, you know, we celebrate that. You know, we want people to be honored in what they're doing always. And we are thrilled when people come back. And so just trying to create the best possible environment for people, especially during these times when everybody, you know, I think the world is in a little bit of a state of shock, anxiety, and grieving. And so, you know, even though, you know, I always say we're not saving the whales, you know, we're making
brain surgery.
No, we're making content. Hopefully we can make some people happy, you know, and provide a little bit of an escape right now, a much needed escape from the news cycle and whatnot. But the people within our view, what can we do to make life better for them? And that's a win. That's a win.
So I'm going to throw this one out there. I don't know how you're going to answer it. I have a feeling, but I want to see how you respond is, what has been the biggest challenge for yourself in this whole pandemic world we live in?
The biggest challenge, I think, it's a great question. Separating work and family, and, you know, I really want to be a good mom. I really want to be a good wife. I want to be a good daughter, sister. I want to be great. I want to create the best. I want people to have the best time of their lives at Atomic and feel honored in what they're doing. And trying to do that when, you know, you're in your little bubble and just, I think just managing it all and seeing the lines are all blurring together. You get up, you brush your teeth, you sit right down, you're like, here I am at work.
Do you have a routine that you do just to kind of have somewhat of a normal, you know, pattern?
I find getting outside really helps in the morning. I'm not, you know, I've never pretended to have it all. I'm not that athletic. I wish I was. I you know, I don't exercise as much as I should. I've kind of got, you know, 3 kids, you know, parents, family I care deeply about, and then work. I you know, I wish I could see friends more. I mean, we're all in that situation right now with the bubbles. And I wish I could exercise more, but I could never put it all together. So I try to get outside for 20 minutes with my dog in the morning, even if it's 5 a.m. And something about walking outside in the fresh air, I think, is the greatest sort of reset. Even 20 minutes. I mean, what do you do?
Well, it's hard because it's like you get up in the morning. I try and exercise before my workday, but because I mostly deal with Toronto, I'm online earlier. And that's been a bit of a challenge because I've always been a morning workout person. And so adjusting that, but I do get up, it's like I have a routine, whereas I make sure I take the dog out and I feed the dog, remember to feed the dog and brush my teeth. And it's a matter of going to work and having a setup. But the challenge I'm finding is actually getting outside at some time in the day before the day's over. And for my own mental health, it's really important. And all of a sudden it's 5, 6 o'clock and I've been inside in the same space all day and I get a little stir crazy. So I'm really trying to make sure I get that sort of a little window of time to get outside like yourself. It's so incredibly 100%. Important.
And there's something about going, you know, I think when you're in the office, okay, I'm standing up, I'm walking to a different meeting room.
Exactly.
I'm going back to the space I sit. I'm going to have a meeting where we go for lunch. So you're generally more changing scenery throughout the day. And like you, sometimes I'll start Zooms at 6 a.m. because I'm doing calls with the East Coast. And then I'm still sitting there at 6 p.m. in my track pants and maybe a nicer shirt going, whoa, what the heck happened? And I feel like a zombie. I'm calling myself the zombie.
A zombie. I actually try and put like work clothes on, not to the extent if I was in person, but I try not to live in my sweatpants because, well, I don't have that many pairs, but also, just to feel normal. Because, you know, it's like I sit in my basement like yourself. I look out my window at another house. If I don't see the light of day all day, it's not good for my own mental health.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it's I admire you putting. I haven't gotten out of the elastic waistband pants in about 7 months, and that is a little scary.
Today I put on denim. I'm like really dressed up for you.
I'm not even sure my denim would do off anymore.
Okay, so I'm going to change directions here, and we're going to talk about, diversity and inclusion. So, recently there's been a big call to action for diversity and inclusion, not only in our industry, but worldwide. So tell me a little bit about what Thunderbird Atomic is doing in regards to D&I from an artist perspective, like new opportunities provided to women, Indigenous, people of color, those with disabilities, LGBTQ2S+. Tell me.
Absolutely. Well, I think that the call to action in 2020 has been one of the best things about this year. Certainly, there's nothing more important than creating authentic voices, new storytellers. And I would say it's the cornerstone of who we want to be as a company. Not only is it the right thing to do, it's the healthy thing to do. And it makes for better content all around. And some more tangible things that we've been doing is, for example, Molly of Denali, one of the shows we developed with PBS, which won a Peabody this summer for telling stories that matter, of authenticity. And I couldn't be more proud of the teams at Atomic. We had over 60 Indigenous interns throughout, and many of which have gone on to be working full-time in the industry today. So a lot of internship problems. We've recently updated our anti-racist policies in our handbook to ensure the studio is inclusive, respectful for everyone. We're participating in multiple internship programs with various programs. One would be with Film to Future, which is a group creating opportunities for underserved, low-income, marginalized youth in filmmaking and content creation. We've also, as part of our commitment to Black Lives Matter, we're working with the Center for Young Black Professionals to arrange several talks and virtual tours at all of our studios. And we have, an internal company-wide pledge to reach a 50-50 balance of male and female staff by 2025. Our Great Pacific, our factual company, has opened up an Indigenous division focusing on content such as Queen of the Oil Patch. And so we really are also looking to working with our partners to cast authentically, offer mentorships, create shadowing positions so we can set new voices up for success in a really meaningful way. Without sort of, and so when we're in early discussions with our partners, do we add a position here and a position there? And how do we structure this budget? And we'll put money into, and so that we can make sure that we're getting people the credits that they need and that their voices are heard and we're elevating them, but in a way that is 100% setting them up for success. So I think, that's a sort of overview of some of the things happening right now.
You've mentioned women, Indigenous, people of color in the support factor there. What about people with disabilities? Because that is an area where, people do struggle to get into our industry sometimes.
100%. We were working with the BC government, looking at bringing, we hired a couple people with autism, and getting the right supports in place. Many of our staff is on the spectrum, and we celebrate that. It's wonderful. And some people, like all of us, need more support than others. And there are some programs in place. So I think, like anything, the more diverse voices you have, LGBTQ, from
the queer community, myself included.
Oh, absolutely. Our company, we hosted a prom, and volunteered at an LGBTQ prom. Our staff set it up, ran it. Anything we can do to uplift the voices within our community, so important, whatever that may be, and give them a forum as content providers. we're in a powerful place, but it's a responsibility to elevate all voices, whether it's disabilities, LGBTQ community, the diverse, authentic racial voices, women, anything that has been marginalized, any voices. We need to change the trajectory and create content that is celebrating those voices and allowing those voices to lead that content.
So talking about content, some of the drivers are the broadcasters. How do you have that conversation with broadcasters about changing the content itself? Because, sometimes, or in the past, it's landed on deaf ears. So has the conversation changed?
I am seeing it change. People still want quality, but you also, it's realized that if you want to create a new generation of filmmakers, of authentic voices from any voice that been marginalized or not elevated and celebrated, you need to get away of the notion of someone having 8,000 credits because you're just going to keep going to the same old. And we want to inspire our youth. It's our job.
Yeah.
I always say, if you can see it, you can be it. So when kids see themselves reflected back, that's the goal.
I love it.
And everybody, if you can see it, you can be it. So think of every child out there that might be struggling, that might be transitioning, or might be, feeling marginalized in some way. We should honor that. We should celebrate it. And we have the ability and the platform to do it. And those types of authentic projects that I want to be doing need to be led by those voices. So we are working with the partners and broadcasters to say, I think this is an up and coming star talent. Yes, they haven't directed a million things. But if we want to change the narrative, then we are going to have to change that expectation and get these up and coming stars the right credits and support them in a way that they're set up for success. So it changes the approach to it, but it's amazing what's starting to happen.
I'm so happy to hear that. I mean, it's been my experience as well, as that broadcasters and even toy companies are starting to listen. And, there is so much content now that is sort of tied to toy and merchandise and it's changing the language within that community as well, because it was in the 80s where you all of a sudden started seeing a clear aisle of, it was very gender specific and color specific. And it's like, let's throw that out and go somewhat back, but reinvent it in a way where the aisles are just as they are. And then kids can choose what they want instead of being told what they want.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
I think this year more so than ever, what we've seen evolve, with a lot of the movements is freeing us all to make the right choices and the healthy choices. And we're going to hear different stories. And isn't that amazing? And especially when we're creating content for kids, if we can do our small part to have them see their voices and feelings reflected back, that I can't think of anything more important.
It is. It's sort of exciting and satisfying, and you just feel so good about seeing the change out there.
Yes.
I think how have your teams responded, like your artists in-house? How has the response been with, you as a driving factor with that, but also just how they're incorporating their lives, their own personal experiences into the content?
I think it's been very well received. We put the majority of our staff through diversity and inclusivity training with Jesse from Kitten Common, and they did an amazing job teaching us about our unconscious bias, what we all bring to the table. We worked with Jesse in February, just before everything the world went on its head. And they taught us so much about not only ourselves in the workplace, but in the type of content we should be creating going forward. And so I think people, are excited, and I see other people. I have to give shout outs, again, the team is so motivated to lift the voices. And Even, directors that do have 100 credits are the first ones to raise their hands right now and say, I'm going to go in the background. I'll work on the show. I don't need a credit. Let's, but I want this person to be set up for success.
And do they work as a mentor then?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's
fantastic.
And people, but there's no hesitation. So I'm seeing it widely embraced because people feel better when I think especially right now, pandemic, everything going on, we all feel better when we're helping.
Yeah.
And when we're trying to be part of something that we might be able to control and in some small way try and make the world a better place.
I hear you. If we could all do that.
I know. Yes.
We all had your process and your thoughts into doing that, it would be such a better place.
Well, I think it's, there's a lot of people rowing in the same direction right now, which is heartening.
It is. So before we go to Q&A, I have one more question for you. And this one's like totally off topic and such. So if your team was to describe you, what words do you think that they would use?
Oh my goodness. I think they would say I care. I don't always get it right. I definitely don't pretend to ever always get it right. I make a lot of mistakes, but I deeply care. So I think, that people know I would try to come from that place. And my job is working for the teams. I'm extremely fortunate at Atomic to have people like Nadine Westerbarky and Colin Beadle and Joel Bradley. And oh my goodness, the list goes on of amazing people that I get to surround myself. And all of those people make me want to try and be a better person each and every day. I work with these people and I think, how can I be better? So yeah, probably, Jen can often screw things up, but at least she's trying. She cares. That
is your reputation. You do care, Jen.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Kylie.
You do.
Thank you.
So I think we might open it up to our viewers now to ask questions. I see that a few have come in already, so I'm going to start throwing them at you. First one up is, how have your values shifted over the years of your career?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, as I've gotten older, the perspective, that's one great thing about getting up into your 40s is, it's, I'm able to really have a better perspective and, I think just really taking the judgment. I've become less judgmental as I've gotten older. I've seen so much. I have kids. There's nothing more humbling than that. And just one of, I'm less quick to snap judgment probably than I used to be. Which
do you have more patience?
Patience. I think that's the word. I have much more patience. I would say earlier on in my career, I was more impatient. When I saw something working, I'd be like, oh, it's not working. But now I realize there's a million different reasons because why that cannot be. And so my focus is really it's always been on the people, but it's doubled down because I realize now as long as our values are aligned, anything can be fixed. Anything can be fixed.
I agree.
So it's
it's not a 5-alarm fire just yet.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, our next question is, what has surprised you as a positive that's come from working remotely? And would any of those surprises be something you would consider integrating into your studio long-term?
That's a great question. Certainly, I think going forward, we'll always try and create now a work from home office hybrid. I think some of the positives are the flexibility. We're missing the team, kickoffs, creative, being in the same environment. But it's hard to live in cities like Los Angeles and Vancouver it's expensive. And I've seen some people move away and buy places. And that's amazing. And people, I think, you know, should be able to do that and not have to face a commute 5 days a week anymore. Yeah. We've proven we can do it. We don't need to do it. So going forward, is there a way to have sort of 2 days in the office, 3 days at home that are coordinated, allow people greater flexibility? I think that's going to be an imperative going forward. That what do they need to do with their lives? And so now that we've gone into this mass experiment, which again, if we planned to do a work from home, it would have been sort of 18 months killed by committee. Never would have happened.
Never would happen because you always have to be in person. It's forced to the conversation, right?
Never would have happened.
Pandemic has, yeah.
And so, you know, again, I think I said this earlier, but you never want to be reactive. This situation was great to be reactive because we all had to work together. You and I worked together. How do we get off site? Do it in a secure way, honor our partner security protocols. Now, a silver lining, people can live where they want. If someone wants to buy a house in Whistler, amazing. The other silver lining, I think, is, you know, the maybe for the environment with travel. I don't think we'll ever go back. I used to get up at 6 a.m.
You were on the plane all the time.
All the time I was flying. All the time. In late February, I actually thought, I don't know how I can keep flying this much. I love people and I love flying, but if the pendulum sometimes is more in the middle, I would go for a day meeting in New York. That's silly. You know, when you can have a Zoom call, and that's not really good for the environment either. Maybe that will be a silver lining to come out of this, is that we can do better by the environment when we look at things like work, travel, and again, feeding into a better work-life balance for people. Yeah.
I hear you. I think it's interesting how it's all kind of come about, because going back to, you know, having those conversations about how do we let people work from home, and in animation, the conversation's always been, can happen. You have to be in the studio, security, this, that, and the other. And then pandemic hits. And then all of a sudden everyone's working from home and adapting and such. It's really interesting. For myself, I like the balance. I would like to go into a studio at some point again. I miss that face-to-face time, but also having the opportunity or the option to have some time at home as well.
Yeah, that's what I think. Has that what you've been hearing, Kylie, that most other, you know,
I think most studios, I've been asking a lot of studios, like how, you know, when everything's over, when the pandemic one day will be over and we get the thumbs up to go back to work on a regular basis, you know, what does that look like? And a lot of studios have done surveys to their artists and their crew and their team. And it's about a 50-50 split.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yes. I think kind of find that perfect hybrid.
Do you think the government will get sort of involved in some way and provide opportunities for companies that allow that, just from, you know, you have teams that work from home, but you're also thinking about the environment because there's less people on the road and that. Do you think the government will acknowledge that?
There might be some incentives, certainly in tax breaks for everybody, you know, working from home. I think so. Yeah. To your point, again, the environment, less commuting means less people on the road. When I first started commuting from Deep Cove to downtown Vancouver, it was about 25, 30 minutes. And then laterally, it was definitely an hour each way. And so how do we, you know, is that a benefit overall? And I think it will be. And it is finding that hybrid going forward and structure to it. That's what we're talking about internally as a leadership team. It can't be sort of, you don't know where anyone is at any time. So it'll have to be, you know, per production, this chunk of people is at home now, this group of people is not. And in fact, we did just sublease a building, our Thunderbird head office, this week. So we did downsize our real estate with that plan going forward.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, is studios have all this square footage and footprint that they may not need anymore, not only in our industry, but many industries. So I'm curious to see what will happen with, you know, our downtown core and studios as a whole.
I couldn't agree more, Kylie. I mean, and most studios are open concept.
Yeah.
So even when things start to normalize, how comfortable are people ever going to feel sitting in such a tightly packed environment when we've been so conditioned, to keep the distance and dividers and all of these things? I think it'll change the way work looks, or these big, tall office buildings. Imagine going to a market and getting 30 people onto an elevator the way we used to.
The thought of that just makes me anxious.
If you're working somewhere on the 30th floor, it could take you hours to get up the elevator and down every day, because
maybe you just start doing the stairs. There's your form of exercise.
There's another silver lining. Everyone has to take the stairs. No one wants to pack into elevators anymore.
Look at the positive, Yeah. So there's another question here. It's like, great to hear that you say that you make mistakes. How did you learn not to dwell on the mistakes and just move on? Or do you? Or do you dwell on them?
Sometimes I do, certainly. I think you just have to be kind to yourself. If the mistakes aren't born out of malintent, you're not actively trying to be political or maneuver, or you're not working for yourself. If you take the I, as long as you've always taken the I out of it, your ego should be, as a leader, so firmly packed in a bag and stored somewhere. It has to be absolutely egoless. And if you're coming from a pure place of trying to do right by the team, then you can say to yourself, you know what, just I got to be kind to myself today, because that's okay. And again, I don't mind environments where people make mistakes, as long as the attitude and the right mindset is there, because I do think when people try new things when there's no fear of repercussion, where you're in an environment where you're under a thumb and you think, if I try something, if I step out of this lane a bit, that people stop thinking for themselves. If you're in that situation where you're not feeling empowered, they're just thinking, what will not get me in trouble? What will please this one person? Yeah. You're never going to get the best work out of anyone, and they're never going to feel good about what they're doing. And and they're going to find a way to leave, because I always think people will leave if, three things aren't in place. If they don't have the tools to do their job, if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, or if their managers don't have their backs. And those, as long as those three things are in place, I always think people will generally be happy and you can support them. But part of having someone's backs is empowering them, allowing them to make their own decisions. If a mistake happens, you don't point fingers, you get behind them and fix it. And that's how people grow and keep getting better and better and better at their jobs. So I think for me, I've just learned to forgive myself and try and keep that positive self-talk. We all need to do it. It's a game changer, because it's so easy to slip into the negative self-talk in the head. And practicing that attitude of gratitude every day. I just try and say three things I'm grateful for when I wake up. They don't have to be big things. And then allowing your mindset to be correct, so that when the mistakes happen, you can just be kind to yourself.
And to one another.
And move on. Yeah. Absolutely. Exactly.
One other thing I think for myself is having a voice at the table is important for people to feel engaged as well, because if they feel like they're just pumping out their work or just being told what to do all the time, instead of asking, well, how do you feel about this? Or what are your thoughts? You get people engaged and more committed to what they're working on.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. No one wants to feel like a number, and you'll actually never build a culture of excellence unless you create that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I believe you're never going to build the company you want to build.
I agree. I can agree more. Yeah. Now, for our listeners, there is still room for questions. So if you have any, please send them. I do have a few more. Let's see. And how do you engage? Oh, this one's a good one. How do you engage with quiet members of your team when Zoom is the only format? Is it better for you to have be more attentive to those individuals, encourage engagement? Because you know, in our industry, you have a lot of people who tend to sit back?
That's a great question, Kylie. One thing I've learned about introverts and extroverts, and this ties maybe back into one thing I've really learned over the years. I was a natural extrovert, and so I was comfortable being on the spot. It took me a long time to realize that in order to fully listen to my team, there's a lot of people that are just naturally introverted. And they're not comfortable being on the spot, but boy, do you miss out if you're not listening to them, because often they've got the most important things to say. So one thing I do try to do before team meetings, where I understand the demographic of who's an introvert and who's an extrovert, is let the introverts prepare. So if there's an agenda, I'm just really clear with the agenda, because I think then quieter people can shine, really shine. And it's a simple thing of like, here's something I might tee at you in a meeting. Here's a couple things I'm thinking about. And then just that mental preparation, and it's fine in a Zoom meeting. And that's the fair thing to do, because everybody, you know, we all don't fit in a certain box of what works. And so that works, as well as I think I still find introvert or extrovert, if it's a one-on-one, sometimes switching to a call, or if it's safe, offering to meet somebody for a walk, as long as they feel comfortable. I never want to put someone in a position where it's hard, because you don't want to suggest something and then people think, oh, now I have to meet this person for a walk. Just trying to make sure they feel comfortable. But often that's a good way to get people that might feel more reticent to speak talking.
I like your response. Let's see, what else do we have? Do you have any books or podcasts to recommend? Things that inspire you or help you develop?
That's a great question. Certainly, I just read Bob Iger's book, new biography, and that is a really interesting one. The trajectory at Disney and how he's navigated things. I mean, I wish he could write a couple more chapters now that the pandemic's hit. I think he stepped away and then is back in as CEO, and now that their theme parks are down and their my goodness, cruise ships. That's one that, as a leader in this specific industry, I've found quite interesting. And then I follow, I'm actually following Jesse Eisler on Instagram, and Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx. They've got a ton of inspirational things to say about leadership in a really down-to-earth way. And I've got to give a shout out to Kirsten Newlands, who turned me on to them. They're great follows from a leadership perspective. So those are some things I've been listening to lately. And Marcus Buckingham, he's a great follow on Instagram for leadership. Marcus Buckingham, he's an excellent leader.
Thank you for those. I'm sure I'm going to look them up myself, because I'm not following or listening to those ones specifically. What can we do to support students entering the industry who cannot join a studio in the usual way? Do you find it hard to train and bring them up to speed in a COVID environment?
It's an excellent, excellent question. We actually just spent part of our leadership team meeting this week talking about that, because I think every team needs to have mentors, people that are coming up in that mid-level, and then people right out of school. Those are your best teams, hands down, always. It's like the perfect sports team. Yeah. And how do we make sure that we're not ignoring the juniors coming out of school right now because it's maybe harder to onboard? We really need to make sure and our HR teams are talking a lot about this. We work with Capilano University. We have a scholarship system in place for Atomic that goes right to the high schools with scholarships into CAP, working with CAP, making sure that people who are new right out of school have paired with a mentor. So even though you can't be, normally we would, in a studio, we're just trying to recreate what we would do in a studio, which is senior, junior, everybody's sitting together, so you can be like, hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? And virtually, so that it feels like their person's sitting right behind you. And so really trying to pair those people that they know they've got that contact every day. We've been doing the teams have been doing a great job with videos, onboarding videos, tutorials on Wikipedia, so that it feels like you're there, that you can watch over and over again. Because I think, you know, you're new, you've started a new job and you're in your bedroom. You're probably pretty shy to ask the same question over and over again, even though it's no problem. But to avoid that, like, here's a videos step by step, so you can go back and rewatch it as much as possible. And then having that one source to guide is huge.
So here's, this just popped in my head. Do you feel, or do some teams like sit in Zoom together all day, so they still are working as a group, and then they can have little breakouts if they want to have a conversation one-on-one at all? So they're working, but you know, they're still connected by sitting like this.
It's, you know, Kylie, it's not the perfect balance. We use a lot of GChat just for quick questions when people are paired. You know, people like Nadine Westerbarky, Chris Buckley, their whole day is just talking to artists, supporting them. These people are amazing at what they do as leaders at the company. But it's not the perfect science, because there's also problems with too much. There's no tone in texts or GChats or emails, even though it's easier. Boy, like, oh my goodness, things get lost in translation. So we really are trying to encourage picking up the phone whenever possible, because when you can hear someone's voice and their tone and their intent, there's a lot less
Makes a big difference. And
so it's easy, and technology has helped us, but there's a difference between, you know, asking a quick technical question in GChat and asking a question about how somebody made you feel in a meeting. Because, you know, we're going to get the right outcome.
But I'm curious, like, it would be interesting to talk to different departments, as like, say, the modeling department. Is there a small group that sit on Zoom and they're still working and just doing their own thing, but if they start talking to each other, they're still, like, they're just online? I know that there's an IT department where I'm working that, and that's what they do. They sit in Zoom all day, and then they do breakout rooms when they're helping other people out with IT issues. And that way they're still kind of feeling like they're connected. That's a great
thought. It might be happening a little bit at Atomic. I'm not sure.
But it'd be, I mean, Zoom fatigue, but.
And as long as you remember to turn off the camera when you all the sliding around, people making sure their Zoom cameras are off and hiding them in freezers, and oh my goodness.
That's funny. There's a new one that just popped in. I want to ask you. It's a long question, so bear with me. What are the chances for mature career changers who could only afford to retrain independently and online, so don't have the umbrella of a university behind them and are cut out of most of the internship programs? I had the impression people tend to overlook your application for a junior role when you're not in your early 20s anymore. That's a good question.
A great question. I think anything is possible. Speaking from my own experience, my mother didn't go to university or school until she was in her late 30s. She didn't graduate until she was in her 40s. And she went on to be a clinical director at Johnson & Johnson, and showed us that it's never too late to start. And she hadn't even worked prior to that time. So I've seen it firsthand. And she went on to have a great career that didn't start until she was 45.
Wow.
So, and my grandmother moved from Newfoundland to British Columbia when she was 78. Didn't know anyone. She just wanted better weather. And then wrote out the last.
I can understand that. I can understand that.
Wrote out the last chapter of her life. And made friends, and and I came to join her. That's why I ended up in BC. And so I think anything's possible. I think it really boils down to a great attitude and humility. If you know you're willing. Sometimes I see some people, and this is a broad generalization, but maybe with so much education, and not all the time, but wanting to change over, and they're not willing to do those maybe beginning tasks. And so then that inhibits them. But if you have a great attitude and anything's possible. You're willing to dive in, roll up your sleeve. There's almost that feeling of nothing's beneath you. You're just going to try and execute on everything to the best of your abilities. Then doors will just continue to open, regardless of your age. And I think if you're, teeing into the part you're online, that's a little tough. Don't be afraid to network. Don't be afraid to reach out. Reach out to me. Send me a note. I'd love to hear from this person, because people want to help. And there's always a way to do that. And through networking, a great attitude, rolling up your sleeves to every task, you're going to get out of anything what you put into it. Keep that mindset. The harder you work at something, the more rewarding it will be. And the more you put into it, the better it'll get. And that can happen at any age. I firmly believe that.
I agree. Do you think that having mentorships for people who are adjusting their careers and that might be helpful, or is that something that Atomic provides? I
think it's a great thought, Kylie. I really do, because we do a lot with young people. I will never say no to a young person who checks in with me. We all remember that feeling, when you're trying to start and you're looking for that first break and what's it all about, Alfie? I can remember that feeling so vividly, and I had no idea how to get started. But I think it can be even maybe a little scarier than in your early 20s when everybody might be in the same boat. So I think that we often overlook an older generation reinventing themselves. And I think in today's age, we're going to see more and more of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Need to shift, and certain industries switch over and change, and the world as we know it we're all living through history together. So I haven't thought about it before, but I think it's a really apt question and one that we should look to support.
Fantastic. I love it.
So whoever you are, mail me on LinkedIn. I thought that.
I can't believe our hour is up. So we're going to have to wrap it up now, Jen. And I want to thank you for our conversation today. And to our participants, thank you. The Spark Animation Festival runs from October 29th through November 8th. This presentation will be available as part of the On Demand Festival. Let me say that again, On Demand Festival content beginning Monday, November 2nd. And for full festival and program details, visit sparkanimation.ca. Also, for those who would like to become a WIA member or renew your membership, WIA is providing a 20% discount for Spark attendees until the end of the day, Sunday, November 2nd. So visit womeninanimation.org, click join. Make sure to choose the Vancouver chapter and enter the code WIASpark20. I think it was on the little card at the beginning. And make sure it is case sensitive. So make sure you get the right format. It's capital WIA, capital SPARK, and then 20. And that's it. Thank you again, Jen. Thank you, everyone. And we hope you enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Kylie. I love talking to you as always, and really appreciate the chance to join in. So
pleasure. Thank you so much. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Kylie.
Thank you.